The act of theft is sadly all too common within the world of football. Thierry Henry had the 2003 Ballon d'Or stolen from him, Qatar managed to successfully swindle the entire 2022 FIFA World Cup, and since 2019, Alex Iwobi has robbed Everton fans of the will to live. Just last year, thieves made off with half of non-league Miklova FC's new artificial turf, worth £50,000, in a pretty audacious crime. And even more infamously, whilst following Hull City away at Middlesbrough a number of years ago, a friend of mine had his dignity indelibly stolen from him after a Middlesbrough fan threw and successfully struck him in the leg with an exploding Cadbury cream egg. So, this stuff is nothing new, and just last month, I took a look at 7 football teams who, you could be forgiven for thinking, had stolen their club badges. Teams like Vihar Slavia Novo, who are based in Bulgaria, and whose club crest looks an awful lot like Bundesliga side Bayer Leverkusen's. Or how about short-lived FK Dileron Uratepa from the infamous Tajik League, whose badge was so bad that it's actually clearly brilliant and therefore arguably superior to the Liverpool logo that it was evidently based on. It doesn't even have to just be 2 clubs. No, sometimes 3 teams appear to share similar inspiration. Just take a look at the badges of English non-league side Banstead Rovers, relative MLS newcomers Austin FC, and the top flight Malacca United of the Malaysian Super League, all of whom have fairly similar looking trees in their logos. None of the clubs that I just mentioned featured in part 1 of this video, so feel free to give that a watch after this if you haven't already. But with a plethora of badges to choose from, and following lots of requests, I have decided to make a part 2. As with last time out, for legal reasons, I must state that I'm not saying any of these teams have actually committed any copyright infringement or violated anyone's intellectual property. I'm sure that it is just one big coincidence that some of them look literally exactly the same. Here are 7 football clubs that blatantly stole their badges, despite what I just said then. I'm only kidding. Or am I? No, I am. I'd best clarify that I am. Bayern Munich and Bayern Alzenau. If you watched part 1, you will know that in the majority of cases, it tends to be big, successful teams who have their badges copied, and that makes sense. It is pretty understandable why a new team would wish to emulate, say, Juventus or Barcelona, but it is less common to create a club and look to Scunthorpe United or Crawley Town for inspiration. Hey, I'm not saying that I agree with that, I'm just saying that it tends to be the case. If anyone in Belize wants to start a Scunthorpe United-inspired football club with an iron-inspired crest, I'm all here for it. And admittedly, that would force me into making a part 3. Anyhow, with that in mind, you might take one look at the Bayern Alzenau logo, a team who most viewers will never have heard of, and assume that they are a little-known German club with some connection or inspiration taken from Germany's most successful team, Bayern Munich. The Blue Bayern, as some have nicknamed them, are indeed a little-known German club competing in the Oberliga, which is the 5th tier of German football. They do have links to a couple of famous faces, perhaps most notably Heiko Westermann, who came through the club's youth ranks. Meanwhile, former Watford, Roma and Greece utility man Jose Holebas is currently employed by the club, aged 37 now, having actually been born in the region. There are some distinct similarities between the Bayern Alzenau and Bayern Munich logos, though I would say the patterns are more distinct than most in this 7. However, the fact that both teams are based in Bavaria makes this seem like a little more than mere coincidence. Contrary to your initial expectations though, Bayern Alzenau have actually had their logo for a lot longer than Bayern Munich. The club from the northwestern edge of Bavaria have had their current badge since 1920, the year in which they were founded. Meanwhile, Bayern Munich, as you can see in this image, didn't adopt a badge similar to their current one, and therefore Alzenau's, until 1970, and didn't have any kind of similar imagery in there until 1961 at the very earliest. SK Yugoslavia and Rapid Vienna. It would be ridiculous to make this video into a 2-part series and only include current clubs. So, in 6th place, we've got SK Yugoslavia, who were founded in 1913 and dissolved in 1945. There are plenty of current clubs who I could have included, but SK Yugoslavia have an interesting tale to tell, and we like interesting stories here at HITC Sevens. A breakaway football club founded in the Serbian city of Belgrade, the idea of forming SK Yugoslavia was cooked up in a restaurant by disgruntled members of fellow Belgrade club OFK Beograd, who were angry about the club's decision to travel to Austria-Hungary for a friendly game against Hajduk Split. The man who spearheaded that breakaway was Danilo Stojanovic, one of the early pioneers of football in Yugoslavia, who also founded the first official football club in Serbia. The Yugoslav Championship was paused after Yugoslavia was invaded by Axis forces during World War II, and once the war ended, with the Allies emerging victorious, the new communist regime was born, namely the Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia. Any sports teams considered to be politically and ideologically opposed to the new regime were disbanded, and that included SK Yugoslavia. They were replaced by a new team, known in the Anglophone world as Red Star Belgrade, who went on to become the most successful club in the Balkans, famously winning the 1991 European Cup. The SK Yugoslavia badge might not look much like the Red Star Belgrade badge that replaced it, but it certainly resembles another team whose history is closely tied to the events of World War II. The Rapid Vienna badge is almost identical to Yugoslavia's, and indeed predates it, and as those of you who watched my documentary about Rapid Vienna's wartime exploits will know all too well, the club from Austria actually won a German championship in 1941 after Germany annexed Austria in 1938 and Austrian teams were briefly brought into the German league system. Florence Esporte Clube and Nottingham Forest. A spoiler alert for those of you who haven't yet seen part 1 and plan on doing so, but Nottingham Forest also feature in that 7. I won't tell you the team that they featured alongside, so as to prevent ruining all suspense ahead of their inclusion, but I can tell you that it wasn't Floresta Esporte Clube. Forest are a team whose tentacles seem to stretch out far and wide, and they are also widely believed to have inspired 16-time Argentine champions Club Atlético Independiente to play in red, after Forest toured Argentina and thrashed some of the best teams in the land at the start of the 1900s. Fellow South Americans Floresta, who are based in the Brazilian city of Fortaleza, were founded around half a century later, in 1954, and it took them a little longer to go full trees, so to speak. Although Floresta is Portuguese for forest, the Campeonato Brasileiro Serie C team didn't draw inspiration from their namesakes in England until the 1990s, when they really did just go all out and steal the Nottingham Forest logo, whilst changing the colours from red to green. These days, Floresta have toned down their inspiration from the two-time European champions somewhat, though the forest tree is still a prominent and basically unaltered feature of their current design. Some fun facts for you. There are 2 stars above the Nottingham Forest badge to symbolise their 2 European Cup wins. Meanwhile, the 1 star on the Floresta badge is believed to be purely decorative. You may also notice that the E in Forest on the Nottingham Forest badge is written in lowercase, whilst all of the other letters are written in uppercase. That was a decision made by David Lewis, then designer and lecturer at what is now Nottingham Trent University, who reportedly wanted the badge's typography to stand out. Sarpsborg 08 and Sydney FC. An interesting suggestion that was spotted by a particularly eagle-eyed subscriber in part 1 of this Stolen Badge miniseries. I must admit, I wasn't all that familiar with the Sarpsborg 08 FF logo up to that point. I know, I am an absolute casual and I should be ashamed of myself. Sarpsborg 08 are a very young club, only founded in 2008, when the city's historically most successful club, Sarpsborg FK, the winners of 6 Norwegian Cups between 1917 and 1951, agreed to join a union of 15 other clubs in the region in a merger which resulted in the birth of Sarpsborg 08. A regular fixture in the top flight of Norwegian football since 2012, Sarpsborg are best known for their recruitment of African players. Sarpsborg have become a reliable springboard for young African players to showcase their talents on the European stage, whether that be Ismaila Koulibaly, Aaron Samuel, or most notably of all, Mohamed El Yunusi. When the 16 Sarpsborg-based teams banded together to create a new club, naturally, they also needed a new badge. Local designer, Ben Host, was the man tasked with coming up with a new emblem, but when the badge was brought to the attention of A-League side Sydney FC, controversy ensued over the striking resemblance with their own design. Host claimed that he knew nothing of Sydney FC, let alone their badge, to which Sydney FC's chief executive George Perry responded, in true Aussie fashion, by saying, "It's an absolute corker." Sarpsborg refused to budge until Sydney FC and Football Australia started contemplating legal action against them, at which point some minor alterations were reportedly made in order to satisfy the Aussies. In 2017, Sydney FC updated their badge, meaning it no longer looks like Sarpsborg 08's emblem, though one Australian on Reddit joked that Sarpsborg might now update their crest to look a bit like this. Santa Clara and Benfica. Not to be confused with the American city of Santa Clara in California, Club Desportivo Santa Clara are based on São Miguel Island, which is almost 900 miles from Lisbon, but is still part of Portugal. Interestingly, the city of Santa Clara in California, by virtue of being at the heart of Silicon Valley, has an annual GDP of roughly $320 billion, which is more than the entire country of Portugal and all of its archipelagos such as São Miguel Island combined. That is despite the fact that Santa Clara is a city home to just 127,000 people, while Portugal has a population in excess of 10 million. Money isn't everything though, and while Santa Clara, California is home to the San Francisco 49ers, it cannot boast any brilliant association football clubs, whereas Portugal has many. Benfica are certainly one of them, having won a record 37 Portuguese Primeira Liga titles, in addition to having won the European Cup twice. Little old Santa Clara, who have spent the last few years in the Primeira Liga but have spent most of their history in the lower leagues of Portuguese football, have a notably similar club crest to that of Portugal's biggest club. Santa Clara were founded in 1927, but they haven't always had a Benfica-inspired badge. Santa Clara's original badge displayed a lion perched on a football. But when Santa Clara developed close ties to Benfica, becoming almost like a feeder or affiliated club to the Portuguese giants, they decided to adopt a very similar crest. Santa Clara's Benfica-inspired design isn't likely to remain their badge for long though, in light of their relative recent success. Now divisional rivals of Benfica, who get to go toe-to-toe with the Eagles twice a season as their equals, Santa Clara are keen to distinguish themselves and forge their own identity. Last year, they launched a logo design contest, so one would expect them to have a new badge before long. Santa Clara aren't the only badge imitators in Portugal. Just take a look at this low-resolution design from FC Alpendourada, who are based in Porto. There are no prizes for guessing who inspired that particular creation. Hachipato and Pittsburgh Steelers. Well, the title says 7 football clubs who stole their badges, not 7 football clubs who stole their badges from other football clubs. And even if it had said that, I could probably wangle my way out of that one too, given the fact that the Pittsburgh Steelers are an American football team, if not an association football team. Following a brief mention of an NFL franchise in the form of the San Francisco 49ers just a moment ago, who are rumoured to be in talks to buy Leeds United, second place heralds a more comprehensive inclusion of a fellow NFL dynasty in the form of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Whilst there is typically a suspicion in these videos that one team has nabbed another team's logo, I think we can make an exception in this instance and let both of them off the hook. Those of you with a particular penchant for heavy industry and carbon-strengthened alloys, and yes, I know you're out there, may know that this logo right here is known as the steel mark. Unveiled in 1960 as the US steel industry began marketing its products directly to consumers, whilst the US steel industry has declined since the 1970s, the steel mark has flourished, becoming an iconic symbol. In 1962, Republic Steel, who were once the US's third largest steel producer and based in America's steel city of Pittsburgh, approached the Pittsburgh Steelers about putting the steel mark on the Steelers players' helmets as a clever piece of product placement. Easy for me to say. Both parties were happy with the arrangement, and eventually the Steelers incorporated the steel mark into their actual logo. being given permission by the American Iron and Steel Institute to change the word steel to Steelers on the steel mark, and that has been the all-time Super Bowl joint leaders' crest ever since. Hachipato, meanwhile, are also nicknamed the Steelers, or Los Asadilleros in Spanish, for equally obvious reasons. Hachipato is an industrialized commune in the middle of Chile which services a steel mill and an oil refinery. Founded in 1947, Club Deportivo Hachipato was founded by workers at the local steel mill, and the steel mark in their logo, which is surrounded by a blue and black shield, which are the club's colours, has long been a nod to the region's industrial past, and indeed present. Hódmezővásárhely FC and Hull City. I faced a real dilemma over whether or not to include this one in my 7. On the one hand, it is an absolutely outrageous imitation of my own team's badge, that is to say, Hull City, also known as the Mighty Tigers, but on the other hand, I have absolutely no idea how to pronounce the Hungarian team's name, and there was really no way around having to attempt to say it multiple times in this segment. In the end, I decided that it was better to publicly humiliate myself and expose my inability to speak basic Hungarian than miss out on a perfectly good opportunity to talk about my beloved Hull City, particularly at a time when we have finally ridden ourselves of the disease known as the alams, and supporting the club finally feels fun again. I said at the beginning of this video that it tends to be the biggest clubs, steeped in success and tradition, who inspire imitation. So it is a little surprise that Hull City have been the target of a copycat club. There are actually a number of links between Hungary and Hull City. No, I'm serious, believe it or not. Prior to our first Premier League promotion in 2008, Hungarian international Pete Almosi tore us apart whilst playing for Plymouth Argyle, so after we went up, we signed him on a 4-year deal for a club record fee. He proceeded to do absolutely nothing in a Hull City shirt and was bitterly disappointing. More recently, we had 6'6" Man Mountain Norbert Balog at the MKM Stadium, another Hungarian international who joined the club from Apoel in Cyprus. One of the tallest forwards that I have ever seen in the flesh, Balog was quick and decent on the ball, but never really got much of a chance at the club. His highlight was a cameo appearance against Nottingham Forest, where he went down numerous times in what looked to be cynical acts of time wasting to win us the 3 points. It turned out that he wasn't actually time wasting, he was quite badly injured, and he never played for us again. There are other Hungarian links, but I'll leave it there for now. Anyhow, Hódmezővásárhely FC, the team whose name I seriously cannot pronounce, are based in the Hungarian city of Hódmezővásárhely, which, naturally, I also can't pronounce. Founded in 1996, which is the same year in which I was born, like me, they have been indelibly tied to Hull City for the past 26 years. Despite my best efforts, and I really tried for all of you and for myself, I cannot find any information about why Hódmezővásárhely FC currently have a badge which is basically identical to the Hull City badge from 2001 through to 2014, when the Alams changed it to remove the words Hull City because they were petty idiots. I can tell you that Hull City's new owner, Adjan Ilagela, has had Hull City's old logo, rather than our current post-2019 one, printed on his private jet, which perhaps suggests that another change, and perhaps even a return to the old badge, is in the offing. Of course, he could just have gotten a bit mixed up. Only time will tell, but most importantly, the Alams are gone, la 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 la, yay yay yay, happy days. That is it for today's video. Thank you all very much as ever for watching. Hit the like button if you enjoyed it. I hope that was the case. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments, and make sure that you are subscribed and have notifications turned on for HITC Sevens. You can also find me on social media on either Twitter or Instagram via the username @HITC Sevens on both, should you wish to do so.